Good evening, and thank you for having me. My name is Ofer. I'm the Executive Director of Jerusalem Open House, the first and only LGBT center in Jerusalem, serving all the citizens of the city regarding religion, culture, origin. But allowed me, before I started talking about my work, to tell you a bit how I got there. I was born in a small kibbutz in the north of Israel, as the first daughter of my parents, the first granddaughter of my grandparents. And I think since the beginning, I can remember feeling a bit different. But back then, I didn't have the tools or the words to describe anything. The best that I can do, I think, was around the age of 5, when I was able to explain to myself that in the words of a 5-year-old, that God put me in the wrong body. During the beginning of high school, I think I started realizing there is a gap. There is a gap between my internal reality and the external one, and those two can never meet. Back then, I thought that the only solution was to disappear, to move away to a faraway country where nobody knows me, and have a new start. All of that changed when I met Eli. The first time I met Eli, he told me, between all of the other things, that he's trans. I asked him back then, what does it mean? And he told me that even though he was born a female, he sees himself as a man. This is how he lived his life, and this is how he wants to live his life. And I looked at him and I said, "You can do that?" And he laughed and said, "Yes." And I think this conversation, this person, was the missing piece of the puzzle for me. Using his words and his story, I was able to tell my friends and family how I felt. And I guess from this moment on, I started living my life like every other teenage boy in Israel. And in Israel, like every other teenage boy, not teenage, 16, I started getting letters from the IDF, from the military, because as you know, in Israel, we have mandatory draft. Everybody is joining in the military. And I was raised in a very Zionist home where taking responsibility and being a part of defending your country and taking responsibility for the country you live in is a big and great value. But in the same time, I was terrified. And not only me, also my parents. Both of them actually met in officer course, and yet we started talking and started hearing them talking about my service and saying, "Listen, we don't know, going to the IDF, how would it be for a trans person?" And again, I was terrified. And so finally, I decided that I'm going to get in the IDF, but I'm going to hide my identity, and I'm going to join it as a female soldier. During my recruitment, I realized there aren't any policy or regulations or orders regarding trans service in the IDF, and I'm dependent on the goodwill of my commanders. And actually, I got lucky because they had plenty of goodwill. During my service, I was chosen to go to officer school, where in the beginning, you already started talking about what does it mean to be an officer, what does it mean to be a commander, and which kind of commander do you want to be? And for me, it was clear that I want to have an open and honest relationships with my soldiers, but in the same time, I need to set an example. I need to be the first one to be open and honest. But realization aside, it took me some 4 months or even more to get to the last week of officer course. And only then I stood up in front of my company of 60 cadets and told them my story. But when I told my story, First of all, I don't remember anything. I have total blackout from it. I just remember how I started and how I finished. I started by saying that I want to tell them my personal story, but not because I want them to better know me. This is a bonus. I'm telling them this story because I want them to be better commanders. I want to give them another tool to their toolbox in order to be better with their future soldiers. By ending the conversation, I told them that from this moment on, it's no longer a secret. And this moment was actually the point where I started my service as every other man and graduated the same course that I started as a female candidate. I now graduated as a male officer. The beginning of the rest of my service was pretty normal until one day I got a phone call saying that a young boy heard about my story and he wanted to talk to me. And of course, we talked. And he told me he's also trans, and he wanted to know how can he also serve in the IDF and have a meaningful service. The surprising part was that after him came another one, and another one, and another one, and another one, and I realized there is something bigger going on than just me. And from this point, I started working with the gender affairs units in the IDF regarding trans service. And I think the highlight of this work was that we started writing the first and ever policy regarding trans service, trans inclusion. And this policy is being used today in order to help dozens and hundreds of soldiers inside the IDF, but also to set an example for organizations inside Israel and outside of it on how to be better and how to be more inclusive with trans people. This experience made me realize how much work is still needed to be done, and yet, in the same time, also helped me to be filled with hope that it's possible to do it. I learned that to care about your country is not only to care about the borders, it's to care about the people and the people's lives and which kind of life is it going to be. I joined the Jerusalem Open House in order to keep and serve my community in a city which is so diverse and yet very conservative. We are needed to build an open home, to build a strong community, and to build a more tolerant city for all of its citizens. The work that the JOH do for the last 21 years is not less than revolutionized. It's included all of the Jerusalem Pride March, it includes youth programs, education, clinics, elderly programs, open counseling, and so much more. All of that is because we believe we can change, and we believe in the good fight. We believe that this is our duty to take responsibility for our community, our city, and our society. We believe that we have to take responsibility for the society we live in and to shape a better future. Thank you very much.